Ms Patten.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Attorney-General and relates to sentencing. Victorian women prisoners are growing at the fastest rate in the Western world, with Aboriginal women being the most incarcerated group on the planet by population. As we heard in the Justice Inquiry and from organisations like HACSU, the vast majority of female prisoners are victims of family violence, and women tend to have shorter stays in prison for non-violent offences. However, short prison stays hugely impact health and mental health treatment and disrupt important stabilising factors like accommodation, family and employment. So my question to the Attorney-General is, will you amend the Sentencing Act to mitigate this trend?
Attorney-General.
Thank you, President. I thank Ms Patten for her question and her ongoing interest in these matters. And I agree with you, there are too many women in our custodial settings. A lot of them are on remand. We know that this is a growing concern, and we're continually looking at programs of diversion, support services for women, particularly as we know many women who are incarcerated are victims themselves predominantly. So many of them have been subject to family violence and the like, have housing issues and a lot of underlying causes that lead to them coming into contact with the justice system. So there are a range of responses in relation to preventing women going into custody. In relation to sentencing reform, and you've made recommendations in this chamber before about someone's gender being a factor of consideration of sentencing, and it's certainly something that I don't dismiss out of hand, but you have asked a very specific question about whether I will be amending the Sentence Act specifically. Certainly not this term in relation to the legislative program, but sentencing more general. The Sentencing Act of Victoria is certainly something that I'm interested in exploring, but I'm not in a position to give you guaranteed commitments around what that would look like. I have certainly made it quite clear that when it comes to matters such as that, very interested in people's views, victims' views, justice stakeholders' views and the like, and would welcome any of your feedback. Indeed, some of the work in relation to the Justice Inquiry is certainly meritorious, got merit. Thank you.
Patten on supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister. And I do actually want to acknowledge that we are starting to see a reduction in women in prison in Victoria, but it's still so overrepresented. But by way of supplementary, I mean, imprisonment is a sanction of last resort, and it's inherently punitive. However, community correction orders are also punitive, but might be better addressing all other sentencing purposes. CCOs are not necessarily used by the courts as creatively as the Sentencing Act permits. And so, for example, restriction, exclusion and curfew conditions could be used in combination to effectively home detain. So short of amending the Sentencing Act, will the Attorney-General advocate for in the sector for more creative use of CCOs as an alternative to short terms of imprisonment?
I welcome your comments, but we're skating perilously close to separation of powers issues in relation to dictating to the courts how I think they should apply their sentences and the like. But your comments and the issues that you identified are, of course, something that I'm particularly interested in. We have ongoing conversations about this between myself, the Minister for Corrections, and indeed the other ministers that have interrelated portfolios, whether it's housing, whether it's family service support and the like. And it is something that we need to get better at, and I think, as you've identified, we are seeing some positive trends, but there are still some of those cohorts that are overrepresented, and that's not a trend that we want to see going. We want to see that going backwards. So, look, I take on board your comments, and there's certainly alive discussions amongst government on the same themes that you've raised.